Hello and welcome everyone to our webcast today. I am Chris Siegel, Head of Marketing for Measurabl. Um, as you are joining, I want to give you a few housekeeping announcements and welcome you to our event. We are excited to share the latest developments with Energy Star, the latest news, and our perspective on the market, as well as an offer to help everyone, all of you on the call, in these changing times. What I would say is that we have hundreds of people join this call, and we know that this is a hot topic. There'll be lots of questions in everyone's minds. We will be reserving time at the end to cover questions and provide answers. Please help make it easy for us to manage the questions because we do anticipate many. Use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen on Zoom to add your questions there so that we can actively track which ones are asked and which ones are answered. So without further ado, to get started in a timely fashion, I am very pleased to introduce Matt Ellis, our CEO and co-founder, to provide his perspective on the market and what we need to go do going forward as an industry.
Great. Thank you, Chris, and welcome everybody. Albeit I wish I was welcoming you here under a little bit better premise than having to contemplate such a significant and serious change the way that we've conducted a lot of sustainability fairs here in North America, and including globally, as a matter of fact. But I think this is the right content to be discussing. I just want to make maybe three organizing comments. First is the goal of today's presentation for sure is current state. We do want to take you guys into the best possible information we can convey. This is critically important for contingency planning, and just managing the appropriateness of your individual organization's response and assessment of this. So that's going to be the first block of content. Should take us just a few minutes. The second piece is where I'll be able to hand off to our team, Noel, Zach, who you see here, and we're going to go into contingency and continuity planning and the tools that we've made available to help you do that. So that'll be the second piece. The main takeaway should be contingency and contingency planning is just good hygiene. It's best practice. We don't know exactly where this will all go, but we ought to be prepared regardless. And that means more than just making sure you have a place that backs up your data. We want to today show you the ways that you can actually keep going in your day-to-day business activities and have genuine and meaningful continuity around reporting or analytics or otherwise. The third piece of today's webcast is going to be on looking one further step forward. This is where I think most organizations have stopped, and it's a really important time to actually keep going. It is not sufficient to merely say, well, our current state is this, and we hope for the best, because hope is not a strategy. We ought to at least lay out a clear vision on the way forward if, in fact, Energy Star is not available to us. And quite frankly, even more so if it is. I think this is a great time to contemplate our future, to get aligned on what things we want in that future, and to bring that feedback to Energy Star, and if it's not available, certainly to us, so we can be best service providers to you all in that future. Lastly, of course, we'll have Q&A. Okay, so I hope this is good content for you all. Again, per Chris's recommendation, please do start putting your questions in as soon as you have them, and we'll do our very best to respond live or after the fact. Current state slide, please. So this is what we know today. I think the headline is obviously clear, but there is nuance here. And in a time like this, I think there can be quite a bit of uncertainty and certainly leading to panic and speculation. Let's not do that. Here's what we actually know to be true, so you can guide and manage your response accordingly. Yes, it is true that the president's proposed so-called skinny budget, which is a common document circulated in advance of any budgetary process, does call for the elimination of an entire function within the EPA, and therefore within that Energy Star. And actually, even more importantly for many in the audience, within Energy Star Portfolio Manager, the software that we all rely on to administer data, receive benchmarks, and do a number of other activities, which we'll address here in a moment. So that is all true. A proposal is not a result. The things that we know about between that proposal and any actual result, one way or another, is on the second bullet point. We are well aware that the EPA has studiously planned to ensure it has funding for portfolio manager through November of this year. So, for absence of all doubt, our very best information is we should not expect, even under the worst circumstance, any actual diminishment or discontinuation of service until at earliest December. So anyone who has had some consternation or panic that it's tomorrow or it's next week, please don't do that. That's not where we're at right now. Everyone is working really hard to make sure that we have as long a period of continuity as possible. And right now, that date looks to be November. Could things change? Yes, of course, always. I think we also, in reading the headlines, understand it's a dynamic time. There's new rules. It's a new world. So we need to be bent at the knee and pay close attention to what happens between now and November or any actual budget being passed. So first and foremost, the actual budget that funds the go forward activities of EPA and a number of government activities is slated for October. The government doesn't have a great habit of being on time, hence the EPA's bridging funding through November to give some more leeway. But we can look to that budget process for more definition on what to expect. So we ought to be paying very close attention to October, to budget processes, and probably more like November, December in terms of getting something done. Second, this is a statutory matter. So that means there's statutory negotiations with politicians. Our friends at the Real Estate Roundtable, among others, are working very hard to make sure that the message is clear that we need this program. Hopefully, we can get some signal from those specific negotiations around one direction or another. Three, staffing changes. Anyone who, again, is paying attention knows that there is a lot of discretion around early retirement, buyouts, reassignments, and so forth. We are aware that some staffing changes have already occurred. Early retirements have been taken. We don't have any indication that these staffing changes are so meaningful so as to diminish the service of the Energy Star program. But we want to keep a close eye and see if anything else changes there. Lastly, there is funding into this program that is coming not just through the budget process, but things like the IRA. Unfortunately, IRA funding has been canceled for a variety of programs, but one of which is to fund follow-on upgrades and investments in Energy Star. While that is sad and disappointing news, it is certainly far from the end of the day, but it is a data point that we can pay attention to. We want to see if there are others. Are there other sources, other contracts, or other sources of investment into this program that are getting deprioritized or outright canceled? So these are the things that I would encourage everyone to pay attention to. I hope this is clear on the current state and what we genuinely truly know today and what we can start to look for tomorrow to guide our contingency planning. Next slide, please, Chris. I just want to quickly review. I think a lot of the literature has done a good job here on why this program is so important, but for absence of all doubt and to underscore it, one of the first things we hear from our customers is BEPS compliance, right? So many city and state ordinances and regulations that seek to require building owners to report on energy performance and or carbon do look to Energy Star as the underlying program for that. That's specifically written into those rules and regs. They are not always providing any alternative for Energy Star. The good news on this is that 95% of these BEPS documents need to be submitted by June. And as I just mentioned, it is clear to us that we're going to have support for the next several months. The remaining 5% go in July. So this should not be a this year problem. But we will need adjustment from regulators if it is going to be a future problem. Many of you have green loans, Fannie, Freddie, HUD, etc. We don't know what they would do in a world where this didn't live on, but certainly it would have to be reconsidered. You've got certifications, you've got obviously your GRES reporting and other customary reporting. That does come oftentimes for North American entities, at least from the system. I think one to highlight here for people that are paying close attention to the data is the integrations that go into Energy Star, both bidirectional, i.e. read and write. If you have underlying data sources that currently write data to Energy Star Portfolio Manager, please identify those. Soft circle them, engage with those data sources. If they're programmatic technology companies, we offer a bidirectional API, and we are very happy to integrate and provide a safe home for your data with those entities. But please just notice that there's lots of injection points into the system. If the system doesn't live on, they will be stranded and they'll need a new place to go. There are also incentive and rebate programs tied to this. So this is not exhaustive, but I think this covers the big kind of why is this so critical with respect to Energy Star Portfolio Manager and the good workings of lending and regulation and reporting. This is clearly the right list to be looking at. I think what we can do now is say, okay, given we got a real set of concerns on the table, we obviously have to have meaningful contingency and continuity planning. Our organization stepped up about a month ago and launched a free account option. This was designed to not only provide safe harbor for data, but to additionally provide real tools to use, leverage, apply, and work with that data on a go-forward basis. And so I'll pass it to Noel to take you into those solutions, as well as Zach. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt, for setting the stage. So now that we've laid out the current situation with Energy Star and what's at risk and some timelines around that, I want to take a step back and introduce Measurabl, especially for those of you that might not know us that well. We are the most widely adopted sustainability platform in real estate, supporting over 3 trillion in assets spanning 20 billion square feet in more than 100 countries, tracking nearly 273 million metric tons of carbon with more than a decade of experience in this field. And that scale and that experience, especially in moments like this, when the really matters, especially, when the industry is looking for stability, continuity, and really confidence in the tools that it can rely on. And so, because we've already integrated across so many workflows and portfolios, we're in a very strong position to help the industry navigate this moment and keep moving forward, regardless of what happens with Energy Star. And so, while our scale and experience does give us that strong foundation, what's just as important in this moment is our deep history with Energy Star itself. We're very proud to be a 6-time Energy Star Partner of the Year. We've been very tightly integrated with Energy Star for over a decade on the technical side, data sharing workflows and certifications. And so if Energy Star goes away or even becomes just less stable, we're not just one of the options out there. We're a solution that's already been embedded in that ecosystem and already used by many of you on the call today. But, we know the situation raises real questions, especially for those of you that rely on Energy Star week to week, month to month. And so the next thing that we want to cover today is how we're handling continuity, what you can expect from us regardless of what happens next. Now, if you're a current customer of Measurabl on this call, the key takeaway is this: you're already in a good position. Your data's backed up, it's secure in the Measurabl platform today. If you don't have all of your buildings on the platform, if there are some properties that you haven't added to the tool yet, now is the time to add them. Your reporting workflows, including building performance standards, continue uninterrupted so long as Energy Star is live. And as Matt mentioned, that's not something we should be too concerned about with the deadlines for BPS. And our customer delivery team is actively working with our customers, all of you, to tailor continuity plans because every organization's setup is really different. Some leverage utility APIs, other spreadsheets, other consultants. And so if you're not sure how your workflows would hold up without Energy Star, this is the moment to connect with us. We'll help you identify any gaps. We'll put together a plan that keeps your data flowing and your compliance and your workflows on track. And we've really treated this with the seriousness we think it deserves, not because we expect a system failure, but because it would be irresponsible not to prepare for that possibility. And so this is how we're handling continuity for current customers. Your data is backed up, your reporting continues, and you have continuity plans in place tailored to your data acquisition workflows and strategies. But we also know that this moment affects the broader market, not just those already working with us, which is why we've taken things a step further. Matt alluded to this, but we've opened up a portion of our platform for free. So anyone can safeguard their Energy Star data and maintain continuity, again, no matter what the future holds. And so if you can just go back one slide, we've opened up this free part, one word forward. Thank you. We opened up this free part of Measurabl about a month ago, and since then, the response really has been fantastic. In fact, just this week, a 250 million square foot portfolio safeguarded their data within Measurabl entirely through a self-serve process. And so that's really what this is all about. The takeaway I hope that you all leave with is that we want to make this fast, easy, and free for anyone, customers or not, to protect and maintain data continuity. And so with this free access, you can, again, back up your Energy Star data in just a few steps. In fact, you can back up your data before this call ends if you really wanted to. You can maintain a live two-way sync with Energy Star for as long as it remains available. So once you set up the sync, again, it's completely self-serve to do so. We'll demo that in a minute. You don't have to do anything else. Any updates made in Energy Star will sync down to Measurabl. And if you choose to leverage our platform, add additional data, those updates from Measurabl will push back up to Energy Star as well. And again, beyond just continuity, you'll have access to a variety of tools that help you do more with your data in addition to protecting it. So before we jump into that account creation and those tools I mentioned, let's zoom out on the next slide and acknowledge, the role Energy Star plays in our industry. For many of you, it's been a foundational tool. And again, not just for data collection, but enabling the broad sustainability work that you all do. It supports the industry in three key ways. We have track, capturing your energy use intensity, property types and property use details and attributes, benchmark, of course, a consistent, widely adopted score that allows you to compare performance against buildings and peers. Share, of course, is a big component here, powering compliance and green loan programs. And then finally, the reward piece. Energy Star offers this recognition through the Energy Star certification program. And these functions are why Energy Star has, become so deeply embedded in the way real estate manages sustainability. Now, what we're focused on isn't replicating Energy Star. It's ensuring that these essential capabilities don't disappear. And where possible, we want to build on them to make the system more resilient, more flexible, and more scalable moving forward. And so with all of this in mind, let's go back to how Measurabl supports each of these core functions and what that looks like in the product specifically. So with this free access, again, not just a backup, you're getting access to a core set of tools designed to help you and your orgs and your team stay operational, maintain visibility through this time of uncertainty. And so within the track piece, here's what you can do. Collect and centralize data, again, sync with Energy Star or bulk upload data from spreadsheets so your data remains current and usable across your portfolio. You can see your portfolio at a glance in the product. You can access dashboards at the portfolio and building level. This allows you to stay on top of your performance and reporting needs. You can track key sustainability metrics, of course, energy, water, waste, but also carbon, scope 1, 2, 3. You can catch issues early and stay aligned. We have data quality alerts, completeness dashboards, and targets, so you can continue moving forward without disruption. And this isn't the full Measurabl platform, but it is a meaningful slice, and it's available right now for free to help anyone in the industry on this call maintain that continuity and make sure your data is secure, but also usable and actionable. Then we get to benchmark. So benchmarking, of course, is core to Energy Star and something you can also access within the Measurabl product. Measurabl's benchmarking is slightly different, however, in that we provide benchmarks for energy, but also water and carbon. Our benchmarks are powered by machine learning and a data set of over 100,000 buildings globally. So we have the global nuance there too. And we also deliver benchmarks at the building level, but also for your portfolio. And in addition to what's in the product, in the free offering, we also provide publicly available global benchmarks to compare performance by property type and location. So you can think 25th percentile comparisons, 50th or median and 75th percentile comparisons. And these are available on our website. Link is on the screen. Moving on with Energy Star's core competencies, we have share. So you'll be able to share data easily, just like you've done in Energy Star. You can invite users to the platform and set their permissions. We have a variety of pre-built reports that demonstrate, again, both portfolio and building level performance, making extracting and sharing that data with stakeholders very easy. And we also provide additional reports related to auditability, so an audit log, and data quality, like data completeness. And finally, we talked earlier about how Energy Star rewards good performance. And this is through building certifications, partner recognition programs. And that really has been a big driver of progress in our industry. Now, looking ahead, we know that expectations around performance are starting to shift. And we're beginning to explore what a more comprehensive score could look like. Perhaps something that reflects more timely data. How close to real time can we get? Global applicability, I'm sorry, and not limited to US metrics. And a more holistic view of sustainability performance. So, beyond energy, can we look at other KPIs like water and carbon? And it's important to mention that we're not doing this in a silo. We're engaging with industry partners, stakeholders, customers, and we really welcome feedback as we shape what comes next. So we've walked through what's at stake, what we've built, and why we're doing this. And now we want to show you just how easy it is to get started. And I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Zach Sheelan, Senior Product Manager here at Measurabl, leading our data collection efforts. Before joining Measurabl, Zach spent 7 years working directly on Energy Star Portfolio Manager, supporting the API and helping cities across the US implement benchmarking requirements. He's led countless trainings on Portfolio Manager and knows the ins and outs of the platform better than almost anyone. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Zach, to show the audience what getting started looks like.
Thanks, Noelle, for the kind words. And again, welcome to everybody who has joined us today. I know it's a busy time of year. We're in peak reporting season. I know we're all doing contingency planning with all the uncertainty that's been going on. So we appreciate having you here. I know we've got building owners, we have sustainability teams, we have asset managers, we have consultants. What I'm about to show has relevance for every one of you, whether you have a portfolio that has never been in Measurabl, whether you are an existing customer, but some of your buildings are not yet in Measurabl, whether you are a consultant who has had owners share buildings with you and you're in charge of performing sustainability services on those buildings, or whether you're another stakeholder, but know folks in your network or in your day-to-day work who would benefit from having this safe harbor for their Energy Star Portfolio Manager data. I'm going to show you how to set up a free Measurabl account, how to sync data down from Energy Star Portfolio Manager into that account so that it is safe no matter what happens to Portfolio Manager, and then how to layer value on top of that through checking in data quality, inviting team members, and then analyzing overall sustainability performance. So let's get started. Zooming out of the slides for a moment. I'd like to do two things. Number one, if at all possible, I would like folks to follow along with me as I go through this demo. This is not intimidating. And so ideally at the end of this, as many of you as possible during this webinar will have completed these steps and will have backed up your data from Energy Star into Measurabl following the steps that I'm about to lay out. So with that, I'm going to jump to the free account landing page that I just sent and get started. Measurabl.com/free-account. When you land there, you're going to see the rationale and the benefits behind setting up a free account that we've just gone into. And when you select create a free account, first you're going to specify the email address that you want attached to this account. I will say you can always change this email at a later date. So don't worry if you feel like you may need to change it at some point. Go ahead and use the email you're comfortable with now to get started. From there, you'll specify a password. Again, this is something that can be changed at a later point. So go ahead and specify a password as you set this up, and you can always go back and change it later. So once I've specified email and password, hit continue. That takes me to a landing page where I specify name, first, last name, and company. Again, this does not have to be your name. This can be a group name, but I'll go ahead and add my name and then company. Accept the terms and conditions, and then go ahead and click submit. And once you do that, you are now in Measurabl, and you now have a free Measurabl account. Once you do that, you're going to see an onboarding workflow that greets you on this landing page. First, it's going to ask to set up your profile, things like unit of measure and currency. And while that's important, that's not going to be the focus of my demo, so I'll pass over that. The second piece that you'll see is add buildings. Unfortunately, the first method for getting buildings set up in Measurabl here is to link your Energy Star Portfolio Manager account, and it directs you on precisely where to do that. So now that you're in Measurabl, you can open up the Sites tab, and that's going to take you to a page where you can link with Energy Star by selecting this icon here on the right-hand side. Once you do that, you will enter your Energy Star Portfolio Manager credentials. Now, I understand that you might not have those handy, and so that is why we have built in help resources to every step of this process. So if you find yourself following up on this process later after the webinar, that's okay. You can select this right here, and that pops open our help center, and that queues up some suggestions for you, including a complete guide on how to complete the syncing, connection, and sharing process, and other targeted articles on how you connect your Energy Star Portfolio Manager data to Measurabl. So you are not alone. We have built resources into every step to help you along the way. Once I sync my credentials with Measurabl, that begins the process of pulling down your data from Energy Star into Measurabl, and we've queued up the remaining steps for you to complete. So one thing that Energy Star requires is a two-step process. First, connecting with an individual account at the account level, and then afterwards, you're able to share buildings and meters, and that's what allows that data to be fully backed up and synced with Measurabl. So with that, I'm going to step over to Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And for anybody who is able to follow along as we do this, I'm also going to send out the link to the Portfolio Manager landing page in case folks don't have it handy. So now that we've set up our free Measurabl account, what we're going to do is log into our Energy Star account and sync that data down to Measurabl by making a connection and then by sharing with Measurabl. Logging into Portfolio Manager, you'll land on the My Portfolio page, and that first step of connecting with Measurabl at the account level happens in the Contacts page here on the upper right. When you open that up, you'll see a lot here, but you can go straight to add new contacts and connections, this big blue icon. And that's where you'll make that connection with Measurabl. The easiest way to do this is to go to the organization field here and write out Measurabl, no E, comma, space, Inc. And the reason for that is we actually have quite a few customers that will have Energy Star accounts dedicated to their Measurabl portfolio. And so it'll have Measurabl in the name. So searching for organization by Measurabl, comma, space Inc. and hitting search gives one result. And this is the correct account that you want to connect with in Energy Star. When you select connect, you'll be directed to a page to confirm that you want to send that connection request. Terms of use were already agreed to back when you set up your free Measurabl account, so we don't repeat those here. When you send the connection request, you get a confirmation at the top of the page in Energy Star, and then Measurabl automatically accepts that connection request, and that enables you to then start sharing your buildings and meters with Measurabl. From there, you'll move to the Sharing tab in Energy Star, and you'll notice a couple options. So when you are sharing with Measurabl to back up and sync your data from Energy Star, you'll select this second option that says share with your utility or service provider. And the reason for that is that Energy Star bifurcates sharing into two pathways. This one only grants access to data within this portfolio manager webpage that you're seeing, not the ability to automatically pull that data down at scale via the Energy Star API. So to give access to sync that data down via the API, you'll select the second option here. Because Measurabl has automatically accepted that connection request that we just submitted, Measurabl shows up here in the list of providers that you can connect with automatically. This is the only provider that I'm connected with here in this account. If you have other providers that you are connected to, just select Measurabl here from this drop-down menu, and you'll know it's the right account because you'll see the parentheses Measurabl. Second step is you'll select which properties you want to share with Measurabl. Now, naturally, it's a little bit easier if you just use this bulk select button to select all of them. However, if for some reason there's only a subset that you're prepared to back up today, that's okay. You can filter out your portfolio by property type or by location, and then select all of them that fall within those categories, and then select Apply Selection. Finally, you'll choose the level of permissions that you want Measurabl to have. And there are a couple of different options here. The simplest way is to select bulk sharing. You can grant Measurabl full access to the buildings and meters that you're about to share. The reason that you would do this is because Measurabl has a two-way integration with Energy Star, as we mentioned earlier. And so that means you can make changes in Measurabl, and those changes can sync back down to Energy Star, and you can make changes in Energy Star, and those sync back to Measurabl. Full access allows your team to make changes to that data in Measurabl and sync those changes back down. Alternatively, you can select read-only access. So if you simply want to back up the data in Measurabl and have that data one-way sync from Energy Star to Measurabl going forward, that's okay. You can provide read-only access. What custom access allows is that you can specify, for instance, read-only access at the building level if you don't want any changes made to the building data top level, but you do want changes in Measurabl to update utility data. You can specify that as well. Point being, whatever level of access you're comfortable with, you can grant that access today, and your data will sync down into Measurabl. Your data will be backed up no matter what happens to Energy Star Portfolio Manager. I'm going to select full access for simplicity and then select authorize exchange. I get a confirmation that I've shared those buildings and meters with Measurabl, and then Measurabl is going to automatically accept those share requests. And that's the point where I can start syncing down full building, full utility data across all of the history in Portfolio Manager down into Measurabl. Before I do that, I'm going to go back to the My Portfolio page in Energy Star because I want to point out this option to download your entire portfolio to Excel. What this does is it takes all of the data that you have in Portfolio Manager and it exports it into an Excel document. Now, if you have a larger portfolio, this may take a bit more time. You may need to split this up into a couple of different chunks, but this ensures that the full breadth of data that you have in Energy Star is saved and backed up in this spreadsheet, including some particular data points that aren't automatically synced down to Measurabl, some particular operating details of spaces, any targets that you may have set up in Energy Star. Those are all included in this document, and they're broken out by tabs. You can see property information, uses or spaces, meter readings, all the way down to targets. So this is a nice option for you to get some of that peace of mind that all of the data across categories is saved and backed up. Now that we've gone through that download portfolio to Excel option, I'm going to jump back to the sharing tab. And I can see that the sharing requests have been sent to Measurabl, and Measurabl is going to automatically accept those momentarily. Now, in the meantime, while that process is happening, and it can take a little bit longer in cases where you have a larger portfolio, I'm going to head back to Measurabl, and I'm going to invite some other team members to access this portfolio. So heading over to the Users tab on the left-hand side here allows me to add additional team members that can access and see, update all of the data that's going to come into my Measurabl portfolio with those shares. And the way I would do that is I would go to this plus icon over on the right, and I would just add some example colleagues here in a comma separated list, and they can forgive the spam here. When I send invites to those folks, I'm going to see a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to see the invitation status. And so it would say pending if this person has not yet accepted the request. It would say accepted if they've accepted. The recipient gets an email request to access Measurabl for this specific portfolio. Once they open that email and accept it, they have access to this portfolio, and they have access to view and update all of this data. And it also shows the last activity for each of the users that you've invited into the system. So now that I've invited my team members, I can head back to the Sites tab, and I can on demand refresh this sync with Energy Star. And so what this does is it goes and grabs the most recent data that's in Energy Star, and any changes that have been made in Energy Star since the last time that I synced this data down to Measurabl are going to pull through and reflect an updated form here in Measurabl. So I'm going to hit that option to go ahead and sync. And you'll notice this little disclaimer here. This is primarily for larger portfolios. We're talking about hundreds of buildings. For smaller portfolios, this refresh on demand tends to go very quickly. And so once you've refreshed that, that data is going to sync down into the system, and you'll be able to start layering value on top of that. Looks like it may need another couple of minutes, which is all right. One of the things that Energy Star has always been very effective at doing is providing a baseline scenario, a baseline set of functionality, and then enabling software providers and partners like Measurabl to layer value add experiences on top of that. And that's what you're about to see here as soon as this data finishes syncing down.
Zach, could you please go full screen? I think there's a little bit small on
Oh,
the,
sure.
give a request
Absolutely.
from the panel on the to be able to see all the data. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, my fault there. So what I was saying is Energy Star offers a baseline experience. And then on top of that, Measurabl has layered critical functionality that I'm about to show you that's related to data quality, and that's related to performance measurement, and that's related to benchmarking. So I'll give this one more refresh, and then we'll see the data start to come in. The first thing instinctively that I would do once I have synced down the data from Measurabl or from Energy Star into Measurabl is I would vet the quality of that data because I want to understand whether that data is complete and whether that data is ready for me to use to make investment decisions, whether those are operational improvements, whether those are capital improvements, or if the data is reliable enough to report on. And so when I jump into the analytics page, I see a couple of different lenses of that data. So it looks like the Sites tab wasn't reflecting it, but that data is now synced down into Measurabl from Energy Star Portfolio Manager. We can see all of the data here. So if you just take a quick time check here, in just about 10 minutes, we were able to create a free Measurabl account, even if we have never had one before. We were able to connect with Measurabl in Energy Star, share the data, and then see all of that data from Portfolio Manager syncing down into Measurabl. And so at the end of that process, what you have is peace of mind that all of the historical data that you have in Energy Star is now safely backed up in Measurabl, that any changes that are made to that data in Energy Star will continue to sync down to Measurabl for as long as Energy Star is available. And you now have access to these value-added features layered on top. The first one is data completeness. We measure data completeness in two ways. The first is floor area coverage. This is a measure of your data completeness in terms of space, the share of floor area across your portfolio that has electric data entered for the performance period that we're looking at. In this case, calendar year 2024. And so this allows you to pinpoint areas where you might have a space or a building that is missing data entirely, either because of things like triple net leases, data wasn't available from the property manager, and so on. The second measure that we show is energy meter completeness. And so this measures data completeness in terms of time. So Measurabl is looking at all of your meters that are already entered. It's looking at the 2024 calendar year, and it's factoring in periods in that year where there is no data on those meters. And so this helps you identify cases where a month of data was missing, a bill wasn't available, it wasn't uploaded, and so on. And so together, these help you get critical context on how complete and robust this data is, whether you're using it to report out to investors or to regulators, or whether you are using that data internally to guide decision making. As you move down, you can see specific buildings and understand whether data is present for those buildings or not. And in other cases, you can see examples where data is present for a space, data is complete for that meter, and other cases where data is not complete for a particular period. The other thing that you can do in vetting data quality is you can select this View All Issues view. And this lists out specific gaps that fall during the performance period that you're looking at. And if you select any one of these gaps, you will jump straight to the area where you can go ahead and add meters or add meter readings to fill these gaps. Once I have vetted the data quality and solved some of these baseline issues across my portfolio, the next thing that I would do is I would go to portfolio trends within analytics to view my overall performance of my buildings and my portfolio. And so what I see here is a comparison of the last 12 months versus the prior year. I'm going to change that. I'm focused on calendar year 2024 right now for reporting. That's what I want to look at here. What I can display are any performance metrics related to energy, water, waste, and carbon. And so within energy, I can segment out electric, fuel, and district. I can look at usage, and I can also look at spend. So whether I want to have a carbon lens, whether I want to have an energy lens, whether I want to have a financial lens, all of those lenses here are available as part of the experience that we're offering today, once that data is backed up. What I will call out with carbon in particular is that these scope level emissions that you're seeing are driven by our ability for users to assign meters to spaces or to whole buildings. And so if you assign a meter to a tenant space, then that meter's usage is bucketed as scope 3. If you assign it to a whole building or to a common area, that's bucketed as scope 1 and scope 2. So these are some additional lenses that we add on to that baseline Energy Star experience that really allow you to dial up the granularity and the accuracy of the data that you may have had in Energy Star. Also, when we display performance metrics on this portfolio trends page, what we're showing you is not just the overall consumption, but we're showing you the meter completeness. And so that can give you a sense as to whether this dip in usage for the senior care facility here on the bottom, illustrate that here by filtering for it, is driven not by some significant improvement in energy performance that might be deceiving, but by a decline in meter completeness. And so having that context allows you to appropriately evaluate and caveat the overall usage and performance that you're seeing. A couple other things that I want to point out before we step off here. One is one of the metrics that we display here on the portfolio trends page is the Energy Star score. And so we'll continue to pull that in and display that, each building's most recent Energy Star score, for as long as that score remains available. And these will be preserved even after any possible shutdown of Energy Star. One thing we'll also do is that within the Sites tab here, under certifications, we automatically pull in your history of Energy Star certifications. So those are also preserved in Measurabl automatically once that data syncs down from Energy Star. So you don't have to worry about losing that history of recognition that you may have at your buildings. Once I've gone through and gotten a sense of the completeness, robustness, quality of the data, I've gotten an eyeball view of the performance at each of those buildings. Next thing I can do is I can set a target. And there are a couple different types of targets that I have available. I'm going to choose a carbon target, but you can also set energy, water, or waste targets. And you can set those targets either as an absolute level or as an intensity level. And I can say that I want to reduce carbon at my portfolio by 20%. I want to do that by a 2030 target year. And I want to set my baseline year, we'll say 2018. I can also choose only to include like for like sites in this target. And so this makes sure that my target, my progress are not being conflated by things like buildings being bought and sold during the performance period. When I select that target, I see a couple of things. The first thing I see in this dotted line here, this dashed line, is the target. And then I can see overall trends of my performance here. And then I can see the difference between that trending history and the target. And so noticing that my meter completeness is rather low for 2024. And then I can see my historical performance against that dotted line. So I can see just how much progress I have to make to get on track with that target. Last thing I will show, and I'm actually going to open a separate group to do this, is that one of the main values of Measurabl is not solely the ability to complete these workflows that we've just showed you, but the ability to benchmark against peer data that is in Measurabl. And so because the efficiency percentiles that I'm about to show you do take some time to update using some machine learning models, I'm going to pull those open in a separate portfolio here than the one that I've just set up and synced down from Energy Star. And then we're going to wrap up the demo and we're going to get to Q&A because I'm really excited to hear the questions that you folks have. One thing that you'll notice on the portfolio overview tab for any portfolio that you set up, if you scroll down below the onboarding workflow, is you can see the Measurabl efficiency percentile that Noel talked about earlier. And this shows top 5 performing buildings, bottom performing buildings, as evaluated against peers in Measurabl. And so how this differs from Energy Star is that we're not simply using a limited survey of building data the way that Energy Star does. Their survey in this case is still based on 2012 data, but you're seeing a much wider set of buildings that are in Measurabl whose data has been scrubbed and vetted by our data scientists. And you're seeing recent data. So if you're getting a peer comparison in Measurabl for a building in 2022, 2024, that is based on data up to 2024. It's not based on a static data set from 10 years ago. And so you're able to then see which buildings are your top performers based on peer comparison for energy, for water, and also for carbon. And you can see this not just at portfolio level, but if you open an individual building, you can see the efficiency percentile at the top of that building's landing page for energy, for water, for carbon. And so that allows you to continue to get an up-to-date, accurate peer comparison of your building's performance across these metrics, no matter what may happen to Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So with that, I'm going to end the demo. We're going to wrap up the slides, and then we're going to head to Q&A.
Thank you, Zach. Just to recap quickly what you just saw, you can create a free Measurabl account and sync your Energy Star data in minutes, inspect the quality of that data, make sure it's complete and usable, and then measure asset performance across your portfolio, and finally, benchmark that performance to see how you stack up against peers. If we could just get the slides back up again. because next I want to give you some perspective on where that demo and that product fits into the bigger picture. I'm not sure if you can see it clearly on the screen, but if you squint your eyes a little bit down in the bottom left corner of the slide, there's a tiny little red rectangle. That's what we demoed today. Just one module within one product in a much larger platform. And so what you saw is a small part of what Measurabl offers. We support stakeholders across the real estate value chain, from owners and operators to consultants, lenders, even index providers. And that's really the point that I want to drive home, is that where your data lives matters. Would you rather have it backed up in a system built just for storage, or in a platform built to connect your data to the people and the processes that drive your business forward? And so that's the bigger picture we're all building toward. It's not just continuity, but a connected ecosystem that supports sustainability and investment and decision making across the real estate industry. And that's the broader vision. And that's what Matt's going to speak to next. Matt, over to you.
Great. Thank you, guys. We're going to double time it. There's been a ton of questions, a lot of them very technical. We're going to try to speak to as many as possible. Let me just, again, as I promised, take us to one more step, right? Which is, okay, great. If this is our current state, this current state is uncertain. We are all doing the phone calls to Congress. We're all making sure that the efforts are there to preserve the program as is. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be asking and contemplating, well, what if it's not? And what does that look like? And I submit here, if you could just go through the slides for me, guys, that is first necessarily an industry question. That is something that really, when you think about it, Energy Star functionality is not what's at stake here. We substantially reproduce and expand on that. That is not the problem. The problem is one of consensus and what we want from this program by way of benchmarking that we recognize and use across a number of different applications, from green loans, like we mentioned, to regulatory compliance and investor disclosure and certification. That's what's actually at stake here. This is important to ask, and sorry, you can stay on that slide for just 1 second, because Energy Star has been a partner in so much progress. We issued an authoritative report looking at 5 years of historical data in terms of US sustainability performance on energy and carbon, and the absolute results are very encouraging, although different for different segments. But this is the type of progress that this system has fostered, and this progress, if we want to see it continue, is critical. If you want to learn more about these trends and what drives them, check out the report. The final slide here before we go to Q&A is this. The current state, where we are, when you really think about it, is one where we have the government, the taxpayers paying for a free tool for the real estate industry and a number of other beneficiaries. And that's been a fabulous deal with fabulous ROI for the taxpayer and for our industry. However, that does mean it is exposed to political whims and budgets. We submit that if we have to go somewhere next, we're going to want to look at that as an industry anchored and oriented and led program. You can see at the very bottom on that political risk spectrum, we do want this to be apolitical. There is nothing other than good business going on here. And when that business rests with business, I think that will be all the more obvious. The market innovation piece is also important. Energy Star does rely on appropriations and grants that come and go in case of IRA from time to time. But the dynamic nature of our market, what you all encounter every day, by way of changing regulation or investor expectation or operational efficiency, really requires something quite extraordinary in terms of the level of investment. So what we want to see in the future is a robust and rich set of investment going into this program. So it can handle all sorts of needs, not just make up for every few years some of the gaps that open up with market. The benchmarking, we want to see that improved as well. Remember that the Energy Star benchmarking is based on the CBEC survey that's conducted every few years, which looks at a handful of buildings and sets a baseline. we can do a lot more with data science and AI these days and large and continuous data sets. So if we're going to evolve this program, whether it's with it or without it, we're going to want to look at that benchmarking and see what else can be done, space level, asset level, fund level, and so forth, in a very, very modern and robust fashion with a lot of customization around that. This is a government program issued and oriented by the American government, also done in partnership now with the Canadian government. But the real estate business is global. Many of our customers are international who do use Energy Star because they invest here, they lend here, they JV here. We're going to want to make sure that whatever comes next is really reflective of a global regime, a global set of standards, regulations, and data needs. So I hope this helps, and you guys can probably pull off, I think that should be our last slide, in terms of, do we have a point of view on what should come next if we have to do something? And the answer is absolutely. It's in fact quite clear what has to happen here. That will be done, we hope, with Energy Star. It will be done regardless. And this is very clearly where Measurabl already is or will go if we need to. I hope this has been a valuable presentation. I think what to do now in terms of contingency planning is readily obvious, so I'm not going to beat that up. I'd love for us to go through if there's any more administrative slides, that's great. We can come off the slide deck at this point. I'd like to just try to quickly hit on in our remaining few minutes some of the major questions. If Chris, if you're going to moderate that, or Noel, but I'm looking at things like, Paige, I hope we got back to you. Yes, the efficiency benchmark is a global statistic that we issue. So that works anywhere, left, right, up, or down. There's a question here regarding paid customers and the differences versus the free account that we've opened up. Notably, the free account has a number of restrictions, everybody from data feeds that we don't allow under the free version to the support that we do not offer to the free version, and a host of others. I think, Noel, you covered some of those examples, and Zach as well. Please follow up with us if you'd like a better delineation around that. If you're existing customers and you want to maybe add additional buildings that start to live outside the system, yes, that we encourage that very much. Please contact your account manager to make sure that we have a consolidated account for you. We don't want our customers adding one account per building, for example, with a property manager in California and then another somewhere else. So we'll help you do that. These are a couple quick, big ones. Noel, do you spot some others that you'd like to hit on quickly?
Yeah, I'll tackle some of the questions that we had duplicates of. There were some simple questions around how many buildings can you set up for free, and there's no limitation in terms of the number of buildings, or someone asked about square footage. No cap on that, so you can certainly bring in all of your properties into Measurabl. We had 700 plus integrate just this week to safeguard data. We did have a couple of questions on the benchmarking piece within Measurabl, which Matt, you alluded to, but just a couple of quick highlights. It is a global benchmark, so we are comparing buildings across different countries. There was a question about, is the comparison done in the same way as Energy Star? Yes and no. We're not using a third-party survey like CBEX. That being said, our score is a percentile ranking like Energy Star is, and so there's some similarities, some differences, and we do have technical documentation and methodology within our support portal. We'll be sure to send that out in addition to some of the questions we had in the Q&A about additional documentation on how to set up an account. We can forward that on as well.
I'll take another
Yeah.
one here from Gerlinda, which is just around utility account creation or utility integrations. Yes, we integrate directly with utilities. We encourage those utilities to integrate directly with us via that API that I mentioned. The documentation is public on that. We can work with you or the utility to do that. We also offer a paid service, which is called Connect, which programmatically connects to those utilities to extract utility bill data and bring that into the Measurabl system. So there's a variety of options there as well. Noel, if you want to keep going.
Yeah, I think there were some questions in terms of multiple Energy Star accounts if you wanted to sync down multiple, and that is something you can do. You can create different groups actually within a portfolio. Think of those groups representing funds or regions, and so there are multiple ways to set that up, or just multiple accounts if you'd like to do that.
There's some, let's see, sort of permissioning steps. There's actually a handful of folks that have already done this, making sure if you get your buildings in, but you don't get, Noel, the utilities to come through. Can you speak to that quickly?
Yeah, this question around if Energy Star sort of goes away, what happens to the utility providers and the push that they had to our platform? Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways that we can handle that. We're certainly in talks with a lot of the big players that push data to Energy Star. That's number one. Number two, Matt alluded to earlier, our API. So it has both read and write access for everything at the portfolio building space down to the meters and meter readings. And so we encourage you to leverage that functionality, speak with your data providers. This is something that's easy to set up. We have 40 to 50 integrations for utilities, utility capture alone currently on the API. So I would certainly encourage leveraging that. But we have other capabilities, as Matt mentioned, like Connect, uploading bills, bulk spreadsheet to get the data you need into the platform.
Yeah. And everybody, we try to start and stop on time. We're going to take all the questions, which are a ton of really good ones. We will publish them and we will respond to them and post that for you guys. I want to thank you again for your attendance. We like very much your feedback on today's presentation. We welcome your questions and your suggestions on what we need to be doing today and tomorrow to best support you all. Thank you and see you around.